Hey everybody! Today I've got Portuguese Christmas cake. That's right, today I'm going to be talking about the Portuguese bolo-rei. Bolo-rei is the Portuguese cake of Christmas festivities. It is consumed all throughout the Christmas season, leading up to the very Catholic holiday of the Three Kings. As you can see, the bolo-rei is a pretty typical fruitcake, and fruitcake has existed in many forms in many places for a very long time. This includes the panettone in Italy, the roscón de reyes in Spain, similar cakes in France, and the humble English fruitcake. The fruitcake was bastardized and sent off to the United States, where it is commonly derided as being something that is almost inedible, and yet everybody's grandma has one on their table. Although in the United States we don't have a great cultural conception of fruitcake, and a lot of people really don't like it, in Europe the fruitcake is actually popular and people do eat it. Now you might be looking at the bolo-rei here and you might be thinking that it looks very similar to the Spanish roscón de reyes. Despite the many similarities between the bolo-rei and the roscón de reyes, and including with other holiday cakes, there are distinct origins for many of them. The roscón stems from a Mediterranean cake tradition with its origins in the Loire Valley. That worked its way across the south of France and eventually into Spain, where it became the traditional roscón that we know today. The Portuguese bolo-rei, however, has different origins, although being a very similar cake. The roscón often does not have any fruit or nuts or anything else inside the cake, opting to leave those on top of it. On the other hand, the bolo-rei is baked with white raisins and an assortment of nuts on the inside. That can also include candied fruit depending on the baker. Bolo-rei is also flavored with its own special aroma by way of port wine and other Portuguese liqueurs. The panettone was developed by Milanese bakers, and the French have a whole bunch of their own different cakes. And it was indeed the French who sourced the Portuguese bolo-rei. That's right, the Portuguese got the recipe from the court of the French king Louis XIV. In the time of the court of Louis XIV, this cake was a very popular holiday and New Year cake. The Portuguese aristocracy, with a long and complicated history of Francophilia, often would source many of their pastry recipes to what was in vogue in Paris at the time. So from there, by way of Paris, bakers at one of Portugal's oldest cake shops took the recipe to Portugal. In fact, the cake shop that took the recipe to Portugal still exists to this day. That is the Confeitaria Nacional in Praça da Figueira in Lisbon. It was founded almost 190 years ago in 1829, and it moved to its current location in Praça da Figueira just a handful of decades later. You can, in fact, still visit the Confeitaria Nacional today and try classic Portuguese pastries and dishes. It's something that I would definitely recommend if you're doing a tourist stop in Lisbon to get a little taste of Portuguese history. The cake itself in French had a similar name, and after the French Revolution in 1789 was at risk of no longer being able to be produced. So instead of calling it the Gâteau des Rois, they called it the Gâteau des Sans-Culottes. It would be many years before Portugal would establish its own republic, however, so the bolo-rei was baptized the bolo-rei in homage to the Portuguese royal family who brought it to Portugal. However, the cake underwent a similar fate as the French cake. After the proclamation of the Portuguese Republic, Portuguese bakers had to get creative with what they wanted to call the cake, because anything associated with the rei was frowned upon if not illegal. As for the bolo-rei itself, you can see on top there's an assortment of candied fruits, including candied orange zest. The bolo-rei will also often have nuts and raisins in it. There is a simpler version of this cake called the bolo-rainha that doesn't have the crystallized fruit in it, instead opting for just nuts, seeds, and raisins. Because I'm in Barcelona, I couldn't get my hand on a bolo-rainha to compare with the bolo-rei, so this will have to make do. If you're interested in Portuguese food, first of all, you might want to see the video that I made about that, but also, if you're in Barcelona and you're interested in getting Portuguese food, I will leave where I get mine in the description down below. Now, it is not just by chance that fruitcakes have candied fruits. This actually has colonial origins. Because countries like France, Spain, and Portugal had many colonies that produced a lot of sugar, there was an excess of sugar. That, paired with the necessity of preserving fruits that they wanted to put on things like the bolo-rei, led to the candied fruit being cheaper and more popular, and thus ending up on our cake. So with that being said, let's give this cake a try. You can see that it's a leavened cake, so if you're familiar with panettone or the roscón, or even just a traditional fruitcake, this will be very familiar to you. In this case, it's on the yellow side, and you can see that on the inside there are white grapes, candied fruits, and nuts in it. On top, the slice that I cut has candied pineapple. The cake itself is very dense and moist, and indeed has a little hint of a liqueured essence. And yet the cake itself is more like a bread instead of a sweet cake. As a result, there's a balance of flavor. You get to actually taste the flavor of all of the little ingredients going on inside of it. Whereas, for example, the candied pineapple here is very sweet. You can taste the distinct flavor of the candied fruit alongside the nuts and the raisins. If you absolutely cannot abide by raisins, this is maybe not going to be the cake for you, and I admit that I do not love raisins myself, but I do enjoy the balance of flavors in this cake. Unfortunately, as with most holiday foods, this is not a cake for those who are trying to watch their calorie intake. However, if you want even just a small Portuguese touch to your holiday traditions, you might think about picking up a bolo-rei. That's all I got for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you learned something or otherwise found it interesting, give me a thumbs up down below. You might think about subscribing to my channel if you're not already. I make videos about food, culture, and the Portuguese language, which you can find in playlists in the eye above, and I will see you next time.